I'm never going to have enough money to like be secure.
You broke your back while riding your bicycle. What kind of revenue do you think you were doing at this time?
That is my definition. I'm stealing that.
You talk about the demons in your head, but you were successful. So Spencer, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is challenges. You're no stranger to challenges. I'm reading through some of your history and reflecting on our conversation that we had a couple weeks ago. And there's just so much that has happened in your life. And I gotta guess that a lot of that contributes to where you are today, who you are today, the success that you've had, even in the times of failure. And so I want to explore some of the challenges that you've had in building this company and even personally, and talk about some of the things that you've learned from that. You made an Instagram post in April of 2021. You broke your back while riding your bicycle.
I did.
When this happened, when you broke your back, talk to me about this. Where was your business at?
It was declining at that point.
Okay.
A lot of success had been amassed, but I just was working myself into the ground, both physically with the hours I was working, and it got spun out of control. I wouldn't start working until probably 2, 3 o'clock, and then I would finish working at 2, 3, 4 in the morning the next day, and then go to bed at 3, 4 a.m. and then just repeat this never-ending terrible cycle because with the ads I was running, I would optimize. It's really ideal to optimize right at midnight and then into the early hours in the morning. And so just developed this terrible schedule. So that went on for a couple of years, and then, working, 10, 12, 14 hour days consistently for years and years on end, not really talking to anybody and just working by myself in a back room on my laptop, trying to figure out Facebook ads, TikTok ads, figuring out how to, run an ad to a product, to a website, and then be profitable and build something that could, grow.
What kind of revenue do you think you were doing at this time when you had the wreck?
It was around $200,000 a month.
Wow.
Definitely not small numbers, but historically, not the highest numbers I had been hitting previously.
Yeah. The point that I'm getting at, the reason that I asked that question is that for all intents and purposes, anybody would say that that's successful, right? You were experiencing some success. Now, we haven't talked about profitability, or we haven't talked about the ups and downs or whatever. And I get that there's a much fuller picture than just a snapshot of what you were doing at that time. Mm-hmm. But you talk about the demons in your head, but you were successful. What are the demons? What was going on for you?
Really extreme negative voices. And it was my own voice. It wasn't just some other person in my head. Yeah. It was my own voice and a narrative of really truthfully, it's scarcity. I'm never going to have enough money to be secure and to be safe. And then I was listening to some philosopher, and he talked about the biggest fear in life isn't death. The biggest fear in life should be losing your ability to function, losing your ability to be resourceful. And that just those lines seared into my brain and scared everything out of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's, being paralyzed, but not fully, being paralyzed and maybe being brain dead, but not fully brain dead, enough to where you're aware and hearing other people that had taken their life because they were in that position. They remember being a super successful business person, and then they had gotten a car accident and they were not a vegetable, but they were that kind of that middle ground. And that just scared me. And kind of since I was little, just the whole aim and whole goal has been to amass as many resources as I can.
Yeah.
and not even use them. And just because I also believe, and I heard this recently, the wealthiest man on earth is the man that wakes up in the morning with the least amount of pressure on his chest. And I'm like, that is my definition. I'm stealing that. I love that.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm going after this is because so we learned obviously, like, this challenge taught you so much. You're like repeating lesson after lesson that you've learned from this challenge. One of the things that I'm really adamant about dispelling in this conversation on this podcast is that there's a lot of people, or there are people who are listening that are looking for that success in their business. And they think, as soon as I hit this revenue mark, or as soon as I did this, then I'll be happy. Then life will be good. Then I won't have worries. Then the demons will shut up, or whatever. And it's just time after time I get to sit down with people like you who are like, no, really, that has nothing to do with it. And it has everything to do with how you look at your life and the way that you're spending your time and the mark that you want to make, or the amount that you're willing to carry around on your shoulders. And so I think I just want to drive home that point, because there isn't a point of success that brings you peace.
Right.
And in fact, it can actually be the opposite. If you haven't created that peace first, or I don't even know about first, but if you, at some point, you've got to create the peace yourself. The money's not going to do it for you. The fame's not going to do it for you. The big company, the whatever, the accolades, the followers, it's just not going to happen.
No. Man, I have so many thoughts. They're going everywhere. I think the first thing that comes to mind is most people are running on this treadmill, trying to run away from their insecurities. And that was me. I mean, at one point in time, I felt like I had to prove myself. Like I think a lot of men feel like they have to do in this world. And, from one experience that I had that was, challenging, kind of like more for my brain and my mindset into, an unhealthy state, to where I felt like I had to prove to the world that I was successful. And that's kind of what sparked this incessant, like, hyperdrive. And hyperdrive is good to an extent. I mean, life is long, and if you're just burning the candle at both ends every day of your whole, like, you're going to hit a point where you're going to end up in a clinic. And I did. Yeah, you've been there. I went to, holistic, like, yoga retreat, meditation, shamans, Reiki, acupuncture, psychologist. Like I hit the rock bottom. I mean, another rock bottom. Yeah. Along the journey, because I just was worrying way too much. And, I don't know, maybe I'm unique, and hopefully, I'm the only person that that just is gripping life this tight, or historically was gripping life that tightly, because, it's not a way to live. And really, like, you could have everything stripped of you. I think maybe most people's fear is, most people's fear, might be losing resourcefulness. I think people can relate to that. Like, if you can't, function, and you can't, like, you can't really be, it's like, well, then what is life? But, like, realizing that you could have everything stripped away, and, like, it's all inside your head.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Founders League. If you want more of the conversation that you just watched, make sure to use the link in the description below. Also, if this video created value for you, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and even commenting, telling us what you enjoyed about it, what you got out of it. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, peace.